Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How you doing?
Good. Did anyone ever call you Robert the Bruce McCurdy?
Uh, no, not specifically, but he's one of my heroes.
Is he?
He's,
Who was
well, he was
Robert the
he was a
Bruce?
tough guy. This is the thing. Like my name has often been associated with um, uh, what's the right word? Not real strong individuals, and yet,
Wimps? Are you trying to say a
well,
wimp?
yeah, something like that. Something like that.
Why is your name
I don't know. I've heard a lisping version of it. I've heard a bunch of different stuff. Anyway, and then I look at all the superheroes and heroes. Bruce Lee. No, there's a tough guy. Bruce Willis. There's a tough guy in the movies. Then you got, of course, Bruce Wayne and Bruce Banner, both of whom are actual superheroes. And then you have Robert the Bruce, one of the great warriors in history. And then, of course, my favorite of all Bruces is Bruce Almighty. There's a movie character.
and the Greek hero Bruce Sithius? All right. Robert the Bruce.
He was off the rails already. Yeah, he was very much a tough guy.
All right. Maybe the Oilers could use him. They don't lack toughness, of course. What they do lack, Bruce, is a third line center and a fourth line center. And today, excuse me, we're going to talk about Colby Cave and Kyle Brodziak in our series, Keep, Hold, or Fold. So, Bruce, they have these two fourth line centers. You could probably add in Brad Malone to the mix, who just signed a new contract. And they got to make a decision on him.
Yep.
Who they're going to go with next year. I don't think you can have Brodziak and Cave as your third and fourth line centers, which is essentially how the Oilers ended up last year.
Yep, sure is.
That's a recipe for total disaster. And it's a recipe we've seen repeatedly with the Oilers unable to fill that third and fourth line center roles.
Yep.
They had one and looked like they had one, and they got rid of him a little too fast in Ryan Strome. But that's all water under the bridge. Bruce, what do you think? Keep, hold, or fold with Brodziak?
Water over Niagara Falls is more like it, but yeah. Well, in the one sense, they have to hold him in that they've got a year running on his contract, and I'm not sure he's a tradable commodity. But in terms of keeping him on the NHL roster, I'm thinking that he's going to be a fold. That I think he's going to lose the battle for the 4C role with Colby Cave. Maybe he hangs around as an extra forward because of his experience, his ability to play right wing, and to do a lot of the grunt work, which he's really done for his whole career. But at age 35, expectations are, I think, not high and lower after the year he spent in Edmonton than it was before he arrived. He came here off a really good year in St. Louis, 33 points plus 13. And he moved up the lineup after they traded Paul Stastny to Winnipeg last year and really had a strong stretch drive. Well, this year, that offense completely disappeared. He had 3 assists all year, but guess what? When your main wingers are guys like Milan Lucic and Zach Kassian in the first part of the year, Toby Reeder and Jujhar Khaira, none of them was scoring. Well, was it they weren't getting passes, or was it that they weren't finishing passes? I mean, some combination, but there was no offense. I mean, Brodziak, he played over 11 hours, and the Oilers scored 15 goals in that entire time.
He was one of the worst players in the NHL this last year. Let's just be completely honest, brutal. That's kind of brutally honest, but that is the truth. Kyle Brodziak was one of the worst players on one of the worst teams in the NHL last year. And this is a real failure of the pro scouting department. They deserve to be fired, all of them, for bringing in Brodziak. They had to watch him closely. They had to really think about it. His age, how he was skating, whatever his numbers were, they had to be something of a mirage in St. Louis.
Yep, apparently so.
And same with Reeder. like, you just you just can't keep bringing in players like this who don't perform at the NHL level. It's been the story of the Edmonton Oilers and Brodziak. Again, you should be looking to fill those roles on your fourth line with young, hungry players from the AHL, like 23, 24, 25, who are moving up in the world. The Oilers continue to fill those roles with aging veterans who they overpay. And Brodziak, case in point, Eric Belanger is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Eager. We've just seen an endless kind of run of this kind of player coming into town. And it's an organizational failure of philosophy, I believe, in trying to fill those roles with that kind of player, as opposed to Colby Cave, who is exactly the kind of player who you want to give that. Kyle Brodziak, how much has he earned in the NHL? He's like probably $20 million. How hungry is a guy like that? Maybe it's 15. How hungry is he going to be compared to Colby Cave? Colby Cave, you just know he's going to be desperate, absolutely desperate to do whatever it takes, as opposed to an older player. So if the Oilers sign 2 or 3 older guys for their bottom lines this year, Bruce, I'm just going to throw up. Like, I just have had enough of that.
Well,
You've got to go. You've got Colby Cave. You've got Brad Malone, who's never made much in the NHL. You've got Josh Curry. You've got Gambardella, Patrick Russell. Go with those guys for your fourth line players this year. They are all hungry. They're all capable enough, and they will help you win, as opposed to Brodziak, who was a big reason why one more reason why the Oilers lost. And I know some people scoff when I say that he's just a fourth liner. That's not that important. Actually, it is really important. And your fourth line has got to chip in. They've got to outplay the other team. They've got to kill penalties, and Brodziak did none of those things.
Yeah. You look at successful teams in the NHL, and you look at the bottom sixes on those teams, and it seems to me invariably you find 2, 3, 4 players who are young up-and-comers within their own system that they're given a shot, and they're hungry players. They might be fast players, aggressive players, and you look at you just look at the teams that are in the Stanley Cup Finals and look at the contributions being made by their bottom of the roster players.
Yeah, like Corrali and Acciari for
Boston. Yeah, exactly. And those are young contributing players, and many times these are guys that are picked in the second, third, fourth rounds of the draft. And of course, the Oilers have had a pathetic sequence of failure in that area that stretches back many years now. And last year they had one locally drafted player, and who they kept. I mean, Kyle Brodziak, technically he was an Oilers drafted player years ago before they gave him away for the heart of his career. Jujar Kara was the only guy in the bottom 6 who was, came up through the Oilers system. Now, Colby Cave is a different breed of cat. They picked him up on waivers. He played out his entry-level contract in Boston. So they lost his waiver exemption, and they tried to slide him through the league, and the Oilers grabbed him. So, but he's still, to my view, a young player on the rise. And so at least somewhat in the realm of the sort of player that you're looking for.
Bruce, so we track scoring chances for and against the Oilers and who gets scoring chances, shots. And the gap between Cave and Brodziak was immense in terms of this. Cave had 0.55 grade A scoring chance shots per game, which is kind of a fourth liner.
Right.
Excuse me, kind of a fourth liner rate of scoring chance shots. I mean, Kajula was at 0.5. Cassian was at 0.56. So he had as many grade A scoring chance shots per game as Cassian. Cave had worse puck luck, maybe a little bit worse shooter than Cassian.
He can't shoot.
Cave can't shoot. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But he was right in that range. Brodziak, he's way down at 0.29, 0.3 per game. I mean, that's at the level of defenseman. And Tobias Reeder, someone who scores no goals. That's the level of offense you're getting. Like, these guys just had nothing going on the attack. That's Kyle Brodziak. Then you look at grade A plus minus for grade A scoring chances. This is your major contributions to chances against your major mistakes on chances against. So Cave had a level that was similar to Nugent Hopkins and Strome, plus 0.5 grade A scoring chances per game. Now Nugent Hopkins playing against much tougher competition, so you have to factor that in. But he also played a lot with Connor McDavid, so you have to factor that in too. But Cave is hanging out there with Strome and RNH, who are they're seen as NHL centers, obviously, and Brodziak is way below them. Like just Cave plus 0.5 per game. Brodziak is minus 0.12 per game. This is at the level. This is the Belanger level of guys. That's a similar to number to what Belanger and Letestu had in his last year. You can't have these players on your team. You've got to find a way to get. I don't know what you're going to do with Kyle Brodziak. He can't be on the NHL roster.
It's funny you should bring up that name. I'm currently writing up the post on these two guys. And I talked about what happened to Brodziak's offense when he came to Edmonton. I said it disappeared faster than you can say Belanger triangle. Just went away. I mean, Belanger was an exceptional case. He was a 30-point plus player for 8 years, and he came to Edmonton and it just all went away. Whereas Brodziak has more of a tradition of not being a big scorer, but being a strong defensive player. And he's still a good face-off man, 52% playing mostly in his defensive zone, mostly penalty kill, which is both disadvantageous to the guy taking the draw. So anything over 50% is good. But Colby Cave was also running around 52%. And left-handed stick, mind you, and less time on the penalty kill, but still he was deployed more in a defensive role, and he held his own.
The battle for fourth line center should really be between Cave and Jujhar Khaira and Malone, with Malone being a pretty big outsider. I don't know Brodziak. I guess if he wants to play, like I don't know if he was injured, if he's got if they just put him on injured reserve, or if he'll go down to Bakersfield. But I think it's.
Well, he has no choice if at one level. I mean, the thing about Brodziak's contract is that it's a low enough level contract that it's not painful to ship him out.
No,
his cap hit's 1.15 million, while 1.075 million of that can be buried in the AHL. So if you send him out, you're only retaining 75,000 of cap hit on the buried player. And this is where another big advantage for Colby Cave. His cap hit in the year coming forward, 675,000, is actually below the NHL minimum, right? Because he signed a 2-year deal with Boston last fall for 650 last year, which was the minimum, and 700 this year, which is again the minimum. And averaged out, he's actually even below NHL minimum. So if you send out Kyle Brodziak and Colby Cave takes his spot, that's basically a savings of $400,000 on the cap.
Yeah, and it also gives you leverage with negotiating with Jujhar Khaira. If he gets crazy about what he wants, you can just think, well, we got Cave. Like, what's the difference? Is Jujhar Khaira, like he is a lot tougher. He does add that physical element, which I think is really important and bumps up his salary a little bit. But if Khaira starts thinking, I'm worth $1.3 million, $1.4 million, you just think, geez, sayonara, Jujhar. We'll go with the much cheaper player. And we'll go with Gambardella. We've got Curry. We've got Russell. We've got all kinds of guys who can, at even strength, are as effective hockey players as you are. So we've got Cassian for toughness, and we can't get rid of Lucic. So bye-bye. So, but in a normal world, Khaira will be reasonable and sign for about $1 million a year or whatever it'll be. And he and Cave will be battling it out. And one of them will be the 13th forward because I think it's handy to have a center in that role for the Oilers. So.
I think Khaira will be a winger, and he'll stay on the wing. I think
maybe you're right.
Position.
Yeah, probably you're right about that. Alrighty, so I'm definitely in the keep camp with
Cave.
Cave, what about you?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I say, 675,000. He's got no offense either, David. That's the problem. I mean, he was on the ice for almost 6 hours, and the Oilers scored 6 goals in all that time. But they actually did have very good. In fact, believe it or not, Colby Cave had the best possession stats of any Edmonton Oiler forward.
Well, my vision of the player, the image in my mind of Colby Cave is him standing in front of the net alone with the puck and ramming it into the goalie's pads.
My
Because
image
he
of
did that probably about 10 to 15 times.
him is him on the cycle, grinding the play and holding a territorial edge, but not being able to do anything with it in terms of pucks in actual nets. But solid enough on the cycle, like his considering the class of wingers that he was playing with, which was basically the same as Brodziak, they held their own in flow of play, and really on your fourth line, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. And he's a little bit pugnacious. He'll stick his nose in there. I don't know. Like they didn't have much on the penalty kill, did they? I don't recall.
Yeah, but
They
he
would tend
played
to have
about
Brodziak out there more than him.
Brodziak played about 1:40 per game, and Cave was just under 50 seconds, so basically half.
Yeah.
And Brodziak was a regular penalty killer, but he had the worst results of his career for goals against per 60 on the penalty kill.
Oh, he was Brodziak had just like he was too slow. You know what happens to every NHLer, and Brodziak didn't have a step to lose, it turns out, and he lost it, and he was just too slow. He was behind the play, and it was tough for the player. He was a really good Oiler in his first years. They never should have got rid of him. He had a good career in Minnesota, but
that trade.
It's always there's time to say goodbye, and if he didn't have a contract for next year, he wouldn't be getting one. It'd be over, and but I can understand he's going to stick around to earn his $1 million bonus for having a long NHL career. Like I'm not begrudging him his $1 million, which he negotiated in good faith with a team that really wanted him, and there was wide happiness among Oiler fans, including me and you, I believe, when he signed, and hoped that he would be good. But we weren't. Whenever a signing happens, I'm always optimistic, but I always add the caveat now, like I haven't scouted this player. I haven't watched this player like you need to do for 20, 30, 40 games. I don't know if this is going to work out because that's not I can't do that. I don't have the time to watch all these players. That's their job to get this right. So whereas I was happy when they signed him and hopeful, that's as much as I could be. I couldn't tell you whether it was going to work out or not. And it didn't. And that's really, they've just got to, I'm making this point for the second time this podcast and for the 100th time this year. They've got to fire everyone in pro scouting because they're all incompetent. They are all incompetent.
Well, stage one accomplished. Yeah. Anyway, Colby Cave, he's like Carl Brodziak 10 years ago.
Yes.
Brodziak, I mean, he wasn't drafted his first year. He went in the 7th round his second year. There was nothing gifted to him. Colby Cave, he played 4 full years in Swift Current. Never got drafted. Was signed as an undrafted free agent after he turned 20 by Peter Chiarelli in Boston. And, he went down to the AHL and plugged away down there for 3 full years and part of a 4th. And they wanted to send him down there again, and that's when the Oilers grabbed him.
And Bruce, this is a really good illustration. We all have this kind of warm memory about Kyle Brodziak. It was kind of one of the last times the Oilers got the 4th line right. Who was their 4th line that year? The Crostiniacs. Remember that?
I certainly do.
Okay.
I certainly do. 2007-08.
Okay. They're Curtis Glencross, Zach Sturtini, and Kyle Brodziak. They're all players about 20, 23, 24, 25, hungry as hell, just desperate to do anything they can to make it in the NHL. Absolutely desperate because they haven't earned 10, 15, 20 million dollars yet. They need to make it. They're all at the point of their careers where they're ready to pop because they're going to be as good as they're ever going to be for the next 2 or 3 years because they're that age. And that's exactly what they were. And 2 out of 3 of those guys became good NHL players. And who did the Oilers get rid of? The 2 out of the 3, Curtis Glencross and Kyle Brodziak, who were actually going to be good. And they held on to Stortini until it was apparent that he was nothing. Like what a massive bungling that was. They actually got it right. And Curtis Glencross became a really good player with Calgary for about 5 years. And same with Brodziak for about 5, 6, 7 years with Minnesota. So this is your model for a 4th line Edmonton Oilers. Can you get it right this time? We have to suffer. If they sign some 32-year-old guy, I'm just going to.
They got Glencross in a trade. The other 2 were mid to late round draft picks that came up with the Oilers and were given their shot, and they were hungry, determined fourth line, and a pretty good one for that half season that they were together. And then Glenn Cross walked to Calgary because the Oilers were too hungry for chasing whales. I think it was that was the Marian Hossa
Yeah.
deal where they didn't want to spend $1 million on uh, Curtis Glencross because then they wouldn't have the $9 million they would have needed for Marian Hossa, and they wound up, of course, with neither of them.
And then Chiarelli comes in and loads up the fourth line with more veterans like Korpikoski and Letestu, and I'm just not with it. Like that whole idea of Jokinen. Enough, Bruce. All right, let's leave it there.
All right, enough said.
Enough said.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.